wants to tame me. You can't catch me on the run, cause I'm gone, yeah. I blaze trails, set fire to what's behind me. No, I'm never looking back, I'm on the run. I could only ever be what I'm made to be. It feels good when I'm living on the edge. Watch me now, roll like thunder, gonna stake the ground. Can't stop me now, I don't give up and I won't back down. I'm a force of nature, can't be contained. I got lightning running all through my veins. Watch me now, watch me now.
Hi, I'm Wyatt Milam. I'm from Canova, West Virginia. When I'm back home, you'll find me at my local Par store.
We have that gold and blue pride at your local Par store. We are coming to your neighborhood soon. West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, we have you covered. Download the Par app and sign up for the Par Rewards Card. Food, gas, groceries, and more, we are gold and blue proud, and we are Par stores.
If there's not a Par store near you now, there will be soon.
Yes, and hello, and good afternoon on this fine Monday afternoon. June 26th, 4 o'clock, the WolfMan's call is live. Hello, my friends. It's good to have you here. And for all those that can watch when it's not live, we welcome you at that time. And go ahead, friends, if you can, man, just join us. We got some good stuff today. It's Monday. You know what that means, man. It means we're going to start out with the Frank Fear Hour, and we have a special guest as well today. And his name is Charles Fisher. Charlie, they call him, and he played for West Virginia back in the 1966 through 70 teams. And he is one of the fellas, the teammates, the Band of Brothers guy that actually contributed to the book, Band of Brothers, Then and Now, that Frank Fear, the historian and author and great friend and contributor to the show. He's a regular now, and the Frank Fear Hour is really turning into the Frank Fear Hour. Well, let's get ahead here and get some business out of the way if I can. Really excited too, and if you can, this is what I like you to do. And that is go ahead and sign up. Subscribe on YouTube, West Virginia Football, at the voice of college football. If you're on YouTube, go to YouTube. It's fine. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Whatever one you want to watch is fine. But if you go to the voice of college football, West Virginia, sign up. You get some cool stuff there too as well. And why? Because the WolfMan's call rocks football. And I think we try to prove that every single time we're here. We rock current issue sports. That's what we do. And because I have great guests, not because of me, because I have great guests and I have people that really do a lot to be able to contribute to the show. And with that being said now, I actually want to bring on our guest today. And that would be, of course, Frank Fear. Frank, how are you?
Doing great, Wolfman. Good to see you.
That's good to see you. And I'm saying, Charlie, I don't know. It looks like you're kind of coming in crooked, buddy. I don't know. Right there, man. And that's Charlie Fisher. How you doing?
Who?
Hello? Okay, Frank. Well, Charlie's got an issue there, so come on back in, Charlie, and retry it again. So, Frank, what's going on, man?
Well, it's always good to see you, and we're going to talk a little bit of Neil Brown today. Everybody's talking about how the year's going to go, and you and I have been talking, so that's going to be the focus.
All right, well, very good. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this right here. Let's get this up here, right here. Paul Mini rechargers and batteries. Go ahead, if you can, get your QR code on there and understand that the batteries you'll never buy AA batteries again. If you go green, you save green, and that's Power Mini rechargers and batteries. big sponsor of the show, the Wolfman's Call. Ken Marchio, that name sounds familiar? Well, that's the father, Nico Marchio, and Nico, they're all involved in this. So this is really cool. Love this. And of course, let's go to Artisan Grange. Artisan Grange Company is hemp. Get rid of the nicotine. Get rid of the tobacco, man. Chew on is 100% pure hemp in a pure hemp pouch. I'm saying my buddy Johnny Cahigas and Meg, they own it. They're mountaineers. They've been donors for a long time. And this is a way to stop with that nicotine and tobacco. Artisan Grange Company hemp. And if you go to wolfmandip.com or you do the QR code, you can go ahead and it takes you right there. And they're also giving away free tickets. Free tickets if you go register online. And one more, Johnny Cantwell. Actually, I was coaching Johnny at West Virginia, and was an offensive lineman. He's got this West Virginia United, and that's all about West Virginians uniting. Stop the negativity. Let us get together. All the issues that the Mountaineers have had recently, and in the news and all that stuff. We need to change that and get going here. Get together. West Virginia United, you can go ahead and go on there. You can get stickers. He's getting into clothing. That's one of our own, man, Johnny Cantwell. That's an offensive lineman. Leave it up to an offensive lineman, Frank, that's got to go ahead and try to do good stuff instead of like Charlie there on the defense. Right? Let's see if Charlie's around here and ready to come back on. Where'd you go? He just disappeared again. So I'm not sure. He was all set beforehand, and now he's experiencing a few difficulties. Hello, Kelly McCord. How you doing today? All right. Good to see you, man. I hope you shared, share and retweet all of you guys on Facebook and Twitter. And Charlie, how you doing?
I don't know what happened there, guys. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. I think you're still struggling a little bit, buddy. Go ahead and talk just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just so you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. All I did was I went and enlarged the picture and everything went out. So are we coming in now?
Well, see, that's what happens when old people like us mess around with technology.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm just too old. Too many hits to the head.
Now you're taking my line, okay? Because
okay.
Because back then, you guys were what? You were the foreign tacklers. You guys did all the right way. It got to me, we started using the helmet more because it got a little more protective. I don't know. Did they even use helmets back in your day?
Yeah, but my daughter came up for that Peach Bowl reunion. I showed her the inside of that helmet that Dave Ben carries around, and she goes, "Now I know what happened to you, Dad." So yeah.
All right, very good. Well, let me put this up here for you, Charlie, because I don't want to give you any flashbacks here, but this is at Happy Valley. This is Michigan lining up for the first time to start the game against Penn State and Happy Valley, and they have to blow a timeout because you know why? There's 68 days until the Mountaineers go on here and play Happy Valley. You can watch this. This is a whiteout. Now, 68 days. Not only is it going to be a whiteout for the Nittany Lions, but we're going to have a blue pinstripe around the 50-yard line in the stands. It's going to be whiteout and a pinstripe, probably 3 or 4 rows of just blue, especially for the Mountaineers. Look at that right there, Trevor. Does that bring back any memories?
Oh, without a doubt.
What do you think, man?
Oh.
There you go again, buddy. Wow, Frank, that's so weird, isn't it? Because he was doing so well.
He was doing fine before. I really don't know what's happening with the technology.
Yeah, I don't know either, man. But well, okay. So Charlie, I'm going to put you off. You keep coming back in, buddy. Just keep coming. We'll get you on. All right, Frank. So let's go ahead. Let's jump into it. And let's talk about what the Frank Fear Hour is today.
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about this, and the folks who've watched know that I love college football history, and also stats. So obviously a very important question is, what do we expect this year? Critical year for Coach Neil Brown. And I thought, we might take a little wrinkle at this, different way of looking at it by combining history with stats. Are there patterns in the past with respect to coaches that have gone through 3 and 4 years? And let's get to the punchline first and then work our way back. And that is, Neil Brown has a chance to make WVU football history this year. There have been head coaches in the past football that have started slowly and then turned it around. And there are coaches that started slowly and didn't turn it around. Nobody has started slowly and then turned it around in the 5th year. So if Neil does it this year, it will be the first time in history. And why am I saying that? I went back and looked at WVU football, all the head coaches from 1920 forward to today, with a special focus of looking at 1950 to 2022, which is 72 years. And that's a conclusion I've come to looking at that information. I very much like Coach Brown, and I know many like me want him to succeed. All I'm saying is, if he does it, and let's keep our fingers crossed, very tough schedule, as you know, with Penn State and Pitt in the first 3, he'll be the first coach in WVU football history that started slowly, and then in the 5th year, by the 5th year, turned it around. And if you've got that chart there, we can put the chart up and I can give you some more of the specifics about performance of previous head football coaches.
Well, if you ask, you shall receive. And I love when we do this stuff right here, and I put it up so you can all see, Frank. And go ahead, man, and let's go ahead and go through this, because this is a serious breakdown. And I was looking at it, I'm saying, oh my goodness, man, the research that you're doing is absolutely top of the line. Nobody's doing this. So with that being said, go ahead, my friend, and take it off.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I don't know how many of you can see this clearly, but I'll talk you through it. It basically, far left column in gold has the names of all of the head coaches since 1950 at WVU, starting with Art Pappy Lewis and then going all the way down to Neil Brown. And then in the middle there is their winning percentage over their tenure as head football coaches. Now, just to modify what I said at the very beginning, Wolf, is that some coaches started slowly, but then turned it around. And a lot of them did it fairly early. If you look at history, it's going to be very difficult to find a more interesting character in the history of WVU football other than Art Pappy Lewis, who, by the way, is still the youngest head coach in the history of the NFL when he was, I think, 27 or 28. But he made his mark in college football. But he started slowly. If you look at, I don't know if you can see it there, his first 2 years, he was 7-13. 7-13 the first 2 years. His first year was 1950. But here's a guy between 1952 and 1955 went 31-7, and took West Virginia to the Sugar Bowl. Mm-hmm. And the reason, I think, undeniably, this guy was a hell of a recruiter. Unbelievable recruiter. And some huge names in WVU history, like Sam Huff, played for him and were recruited by Art Pappy Lewis. Just an incredible.
Okay, so Charlie, you there now, buddy?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Now, you weren't Art Pappy Lewis. I know you're old, but you're not that old.
Not quite. I came in with Carlin.
Okay. I actually knew that, but I was just checking to see if your mic was working.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
All right. So, okay. So Art Pappy Lewis, go ahead, Fred. Continue,
Well,
please.
actually, it's great to have Charlie here. My wife Kathy and I are WVU alums, and we watched Charlie back in the late '60s, early '70s, and he was one hell of a defensive tackle. I'll tell you, lineman. And if you've ever seen films of the 1969 Peach Bowl, there's Charlie running around like it's 70 degrees out with sunshine. It was a monsoon. Tremendous defensive lineman, great technique. And actually, I'm glad he brought up Jim Carlin because he's also on that list, who became coach in 1966. And Jim Carlin, exactly like Art Pappy Lewis, started slowly. He started slowly. He was 8, 9, and 3 his first 2 years. But then he went 17 and 4 the next 2 years. And actually, after the '69 Peach Bowl win, left WVU to go to Texas Tech and become the head coach. Obviously, I'm biased. I believe that was the beginning of what I call the modern age of Mountaineer football, with that Carlin regime starting in 1966. But those two guys, Pappy Lewis and Jim Carlin, let's contrast those to two other coaches that started slowly but didn't really put it together in terms of a long-term career. Actually, the first person was a fellow by the name, and we all know who he is, Gene Corum, who followed Art Pappy Lewis, was on his staff. He took over in 1960. Art Pappy Lewis was the coach through the 1950s. Last season was 1959. And Corum started in 1960, went 0-8, didn't win a game his first year, turned it around a bit, actually ended up a little bit better in his career. The last 2 years he was 13-8, but he really couldn't win consistently outside of the Southern Conference, although he did have big wins, but he didn't turn it around. And I think that really was the end of the Art Pappy Lewis era. And then following Jim Carlin, obviously, was Bobby Bowden. Charlie played for Bobby, and probably we'll want to talk about those two coaches in a second. But when Bobby left eventually for Florida State in 1975, he was followed by Frank Signetti Sr. And Frank started slowly, but then never really was able to have a plateau of success. And in fact, of all the 10 coaches on this table, he's the only one with a sub 500 record. He ended up with a 39% win percentage. And then we know the other names on this table. We've got obviously Don Nealon, whom you played for, Wolfman. Yeah. Rich Rodriguez. I see you're wearing a Jacksonville State, because that's where Rich Rod is right now as the coach. I wonder where you got that. I know you visited. And then Bill Stewart, who is obviously near and dear still to the hearts of all Mountaineer football fans, who started hot and stayed hot. His record over 3 years, 27-12. And then Dana Holgerson, who had good, solid years, not the Rich Rod or Don Nealon years, but did well. And that leads us again to Neil Brown. And again, I'm not saying anything definitive. All I'm saying is, based on my analysis of Mountaineer football since 1950, again, if Neil has a winning season, tough schedule, and is extended beyond the 5th year, he'll be the first Mountaineer football coach that is turned it around this late in his tenure.
Okay. All right, so good. So let's leave it there. Let's let that sit in a little bit. Charlie, I want to get you involved here and talk about Jim Carlin, because Jim's up for the Hall of Fame this year, the College Football Hall of Fame. I should say coach for you. I mean, I got to meet him before he did pass on. What a wonderful man in time. If you all remember that, Charlie, it was that weekend I brought back Coach Nealon, Coach Bowden, Coach Signetti, and Coach Carlin. And they all came in and talked. And it was the best event I ever did as an alumni guy. The best, by far. We had a game. But I want to know, Charlie, what was Coach Carlin to you? And then move on to Coach Bowden.
Okay, Coach Carlin, when he came into West Virginia, I mean, he took over. The whole state. I mean, everybody was excited. To go back to Coram, and just for a few seconds, my brother played on that 65 team, and Coram started off 4-0 that year. The Pitt game was 63-48, which was the highest scoring game at that time. And then the wheels came off. Like Frank said, they got out of their conference and just fell apart. But you had Dick Leffridge. You had Garrett Ford as your running backs. Alan McCune was your quarterback. They had a great, great squad. And whatever happened, because that squad was good enough to continue to win, but they didn't. But to get back to Carlin, Carlin just had everybody in the state excited. And some stories about Carlin. He complained about the recruiting in the roads in West Virginia because he said, all your people down in Welch, Big Creek, he said all those guys are going to Virginia Tech because it takes eight and a half hours to get from Welch to West Virginia. And so he started complaining about the roads. And part of the main reason that the interstate started moving as fast as they did being built in the state of West Virginia was because of Coach Carlin. Because he wanted the people in West Virginia, his recruits, to come up there, and they weren't going to come. So, but Carlin was a good man to play for. He got you excited. He had great assistants, and I've said that to you before. And the game plans. I mean, it was regimented, and he let his coaches do the coaching. But Carlin kept the excitement and the thrill going. He just was a salesman. He was P.T. Barnum, is what he was. It was a good way to describe.
I think I actually could see that from the short time and the weekend I had with him. Let's go down to Coach Bowden, though. So tell me what you got from there, because we all know the legend that he is and everything that he actually meant. Because I'm going to tell you why. All right, so let's just take this back a step. And when you think of Coach Bowden, and I've never seen, now that's too much. When I saw the 69 reunion with Coach Bowden, I saw a whole bunch of you guys, your fellow teammates. You guys approached Coach Bowden like he was your father, kind of like the same way I would have done with Don Nehlen. Really, I mean, everybody says Florida State and all this and that, but I think, besides with his book coming out, The Band of Brothers Then and Now, I think, Frank, that you so well exhibit with this, is that Coach Bowden did coach at West Virginia, and he meant a whole heck of a lot to the Mountaineers that were here.
Well, Coach Bowden and I were very, very close. He recruited me out of high school. My mom and dad had gotten divorced, and she was going through a pretty hard time. He just came in and was a surrogate father for me. And so I had an extremely different relationship with Bowden than a lot of the players. There were other players that had a relationship with him like I did. But, I found letters that he and Mother had written to each other and corresponded to each other throughout my 4 years after Mother passed away. And he was just special to me. He was just extremely special. And, when Carlin left, there were a lot of people that were very unhappy on the squad that Carlin left. And I liked Carlin. We butted heads a little bit, but I tell you what, with Coach Bowden being named head coach, it did not, it didn't bother me at all. I was extremely excited to play for Coach Bowden. He wasn't my position coach, so I didn't get that much from him up until my senior year as far as coaching. But no, he was just a great recruiter. He was sincere. Every time I saw him afterwards, the first thing out of his mouth was, "How's your mama doing?" It was just a thrill to play for him. I think what hurt Bobby in his first couple of years, he didn't have the assistance that Carlin had, and I think that made a big, big difference. But we were always prepared and ready to play. but there was just something missing from Bowden's first couple of years that Carlin had. And I don't know whether maybe that was some of the players that were upset that, Carlin left, just never got back into the groove. But I tell you what, I would have laid down my life for Coach Bowden.
I think I think that's pretty much exhibits it. Frank, let's get back to you now because you laid out all the coaches and the percentage. You said that, hey, you know what, man? This is a tough uphill battle for Neil Brown and the percentages. When you look at it. But the idea is this, do you think it has anything to do with their type of opponents as well? Because now you've added, we have a Duquesne, right? So we got a Duquesne. That's good stuff. And that helps. But you got a Penn State and a Pitt. I mean, it's almost like you're not only trying to make history, but you're trying to defy the odds.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And that's why it's very difficult to compare these coaches to each other because, the circumstances were different. We talked about this. West Virginia, for most of the time in its history, WVU played as an independent, didn't join the Southern Conference until 1950 and only was in the conference for 8 years, and then was independent for a long time before the Big East. And then when the Big East imploded, then moved on to the Big 12. So, but the thing that's really important, I think, is, the old bromide, you have to play the cards that are dealt you. And when you look at strength of schedule for WVU, and I write about this in the book, is that, and it's one of the reasons, again, I talk about those Carlin years, really, and with Bobby following him as being the beginning of the modern era, is that you can see year after year, and then by the time Don got there, you can see the increase and the ranking going up in terms of strength of schedule from about the 80s in some years, now into the teens. And I believe this year that strength of schedule is projected as a top 5 strength of schedule. So the challenge is greater. The other piece, I think, Wolfman, and we've talked about this, and I'm a real big supporter of saying, please look at the athletic directors. These folks are not just managers. Look what Ren Baker had to do in the last couple of days. You have to make big calls. If you look at Art Pappy Lewis, he was hired by Roy Legs Hawley. I went back to look at the record for WVU football from 1931 to 1949. In other words, before Lewis came in. Mountaineers won 48% of their games. 48% over those years from 31 to 49. Okay. And Legs Hawley we got to turn this around. And what blows my mind is that he hired an Art Pappy Lewis, who had been the coach of Washington and Lee, sub 500 record. So he hires this guy. He starts 7-13, and I'm sure he was saying, he's long past, unfortunately, died in his 40s of a heart attack, is saying, oh my God, what have I done here? But then he turns it around and really brings, I think, WVU into a golden era with the Sugar Bowl game. And the irony, little tidbit here, the punter for Georgia Tech in that Sugar Bowl game was, drum roll, Jim Carlin. Okay. He is the punter. So it's interesting how these things go. And then you've got Red Brown, great basketball coach at WVU in the 50s. He took over when Hawley dropped dead with a heart attack. And so he had to hire his replacement as basketball coach because Brown was basketball coach. Who did he hire? Freddie Schaus. Freddie Schaus, which was a great hire, career, brought WVU all the way up to the national championship game against Cal, losing by 1 point. Jerry West, my God, then went on to become the Lakers coach and then ended his career as WVU athletic director. But look what he did. He hired Jim Carlin. He hired Bobby Bowden. Great. He's in the Hall of Fame, WVU Hall of Fame. Red Brown was great. And then there's another guy down here we don't hear much about these days, Richard D. Martin. So after Signetti, who was very successful at Indiana University of Pennsylvania after he left WVU, he's in the Hall of Fame for the work that he did at IUP. So Don Nalen is hired by Richard D. Martin. What an incredible hire. And then look, a guy I know, if I'm correct, he hired you at WVU, right? Ed Pasterlong? Didn't Ed hire you?
Did you say me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, him and Coach Stu.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Talk about Ed. Wasn't he a great athletic director?
Listen, he was first of all, he was a football player. So that means he's part of the brotherhood right off the bat, just like Charlie's. Because Charlie knows when I was the alumni guy for athletics, that everybody that was an athlete, number one, was part of the brotherhood and sisterhood, whatever it was. We're all part of that. Then got more specific to your sport. And, Charlie, these guys know I sat there, did whatever I could for them. And we all acted the same because we're all represented at WV. And there was a bonding there. And it was like we were teammates. Am I wrong, Charlie?
No, you're not. And it's just amazing when I meet football players from other eras that, some before me, some after me. It's like we played together. I mean, there is a closeness there because, you put your blood, sweat, and tears on Mountaineer Field. And so there is that love for one another, even though you never met him or played with him. At the same time, it's there. It's there. And the brotherhood is a great way of terming it. Family. We're all family.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm going to say is, when you go through all of these, and Fred Schaus, I know that he was a tough cookie. I know before me some people that had to work for him. He was tough as can be. And then, of course, Coach Passalong was his assistant. He moved into that. You can't argue the fact that Don Nalen had some really successful years, and you got to give credit to Coach Passalong for being in that role. Whereas then Rich Rod came along, and then there's a split. And I'm not saying it's all Coach Passalong, I'm not saying it's all Rich Rod, but there are different people involved in that one too now. So that's not just those two. There are other people that were I would say more villainous than those two. But that happened, and then of course the split and everything, and then Dana came along, and was Dana one of us? Was he not one of us? But he still had to merge into the Big 12 with Oliver Luck. And, then, of course, Shane Lyons came along and did the Neil Brown hire. And so when you look at this, I'm just going to bring this all right back to your athletic directors, Frank. You're looking at this. Athletic directors are, I guess, remembered, recognized for how well their main coaches did. Not a lot of people are going to say, that golf team coach was really good, unless you really, you know what I mean? It's not the big, and I'm not saying that to be mean, but what I'm saying is that's not what they're going to be remembered for. And because obviously the golf team coach is very important, but that's not what Ed passed along, or he didn't have it. Okay, so Oliver Luck, who brought it back, is going to be remembered for. He's going to be remembered for Dana Holgerson. He's going to be remembered for the thing with Bill Stewart, the time there. That's what whether good or bad, that's what you're going to be remembered for. And I'd have to say, Shane Lyons has all got Neil Brown all written all over him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and if you look at this chart, the elevation keeps on increasing as you go on. Strength of schedule, you're playing in the Big East and the Big 12. And the other thing that I'm thinking about what Charlie said, and also what you said, Wolf, is, we have to recognize that a good share of these, in fact, literally all of them, earlier on this chart, starting at the top, came from an era where, Holly was a basketball coach, played basketball. Red Brown played basketball, was a coach. These guys came out of the coaching background for the most part. and then migrated into the athletic director's office. And, we're at a point now where, how can I put it? It may not make as much sense anymore because money and the competition for donor dollars, all the media issues are becoming so overwhelming, and these budgets have increased so much. It's no surprise, and I think I brought this up last week. Notre Dame just hired an athletic director that came from NBC Sports. Well, the fellow that he replaced was AD at Duke, and then AD at Notre Dame. If you look at the conference commissioners, I mean, the Big 12 conference commissioner worked for Jay-Z Entertainment. Before that, the Brooklyn Nets.
That's what all these are.
Yeah. So, thinking what Charlie's saying is this brotherhood connected to playing the game and knowing what it takes to play the game successfully. If you're coming out of a media business background, haven't played the game, I'm not saying it's wrong, because I do think that fits, whether we like it or not, it fits the era. It's a different situation. So, someone coming in to interview and Red Brown is doing the interviewing. He's been there. He's done that. So.
Yeah. Well, guess, that's so great. I'm cutting you off, Frank, because I want to get Charlie on this. Charlie, but with what Frank's saying, everybody moving to more of this business side, they're forgetting the coaching side and understanding what you have to do to set up a team. Like, if I sit there and listen to Don Dillon, and you can say this with Coach Bowden, you can say it with any coach who's got that experience. I sit there, I just listen to him like, wow, he's so experienced. He has so much wisdom. I don't say anyone knocking down his door to sit in an interview with him to hire coaches. I'm not just saying him. I'm saying any experienced coach in any sport, right? I mean, there's not that going on. Charlie, what do you think? I mean, I think if I'm Shane Lyons, who I come from compliance in Alabama, I sure as heck want to have somebody that has a smart, athletic, sports-specific football IQ when I'm hiring. Would you not say that?
Oh, I agree with that. And, college football to me has always been the sport. I mean, whether I was playing it or watching it, the NFL was never anything to me. I would much rather have watched college sports. And it's very frustrating as a player from back in my era to see what's happening to college sports right now. But you're absolutely right. Those people that have been where you are or have been and where I have been, they've got to, I would think they would approach what's going on now differently. But that's why they're getting away from ex-players and putting in business people, because now it's more of a business than it's ever been. It's still fun.
Oh, excuse me, Charlie, but Shane Lyons, right? He goes through compliance, right? I mean,
yeah.
So guess where Red Baker comes from? Fundraising.
Yeah.
Fundraising. Right? I mean, do you think that Gordon Gee did not understand what he was trying to get at? Was that he needed someone to come in and be creative, probably think outside of the normal ways of creating it, outside of the box, but someone that has a great, successful track history. Ren Baker does at the universities he was at. Shane Lyons was compliance.
Right.
And such as, Frank Fair, you were talking about West Virginia being in the headlines with a shortfall of $45 million that President Gee came out with, and the board. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what it's projected as. Yeah.
So that's
as a university, not athletically, but as a university.
But athletics certainly, and we have to think about COVID and all that, and how that money came about, and what they had to pay. But I do know that President Gee tried to help as much athletic staff as they could. I do know that at WVU. I was there then, and that was much appreciated at the time. That was pretty scary. So with that, it was kudos. But at the same time, now this NIL comes in, Charlie, and this, comes in, and people are getting money to Country Roads Trust. I think a big reason why Shane Lyons might not be here today is because they just had $55 million that the athletic department spent on the football and on the Olympic sports. Okay, there's a whole new facility over there, Olympic sports. So it was about 90 million, I believe, something like that. And, but now NIL comes in. So now who's getting that money? There's only one pot in West Virginia. There's only one pot, baby. And it was hard enough before. Now how's it even more cut up? I mean, they just raised $2 million for this basketball, right? For basketball, these players, this team that everybody's apparently transferring out of right now. Okay, so they just hired or brought that $2 million in there. Well, that could have been $2 million to where, to the athletic department to help pay for the new facility. So again, they're in a conundrum. You can see I think Red Baker may absolutely one day rule the day that he took over at WVU because of all these issues coming up for him. I'm kidding when I say that because I do think he cares, and I do think that he's trying his darndest. He just came in at a tough time. What would you say about that, Frank?
Yeah, I think you guys are spot on. And I would say this, that, again, whether we like it or not, as you guys said, it's more of a business than ever before. And there are ways for people in charge of athletic programs to be able to get a better sense of where they need to go. And it's very simple. You got to engage your coaches. You got to listen well because you don't have the experience in some cases to fall back on. Never played the game. You've never had a tough season. You haven't experienced the grind, the winter conditioning and the two-a-days. And so you've got to reach out. You got to engage. And I think clearly a guy like Ren Baker is doing that, and that really helps. The other point you make is one that I don't think is getting as much attention. And Charlie knows, we've talked about this with our Band of Brothers text group, and that is, and one of our colleagues, Dickie Lee Roberts, bring this up all the time. If you look at athletic philanthropy, in other words, donor dollars going to athletics, it used to go to the university. Well, it can't all go to the university because you've got these collaboratives, these like the Country Road Trust that essentially is the nil source, nil dollars. And so that money is going not to the university directly, but to the cooperative, the collaborative, and then that money finds its hands in players' pockets. And so this is amazing because at a time when the budgets are going up each year. The data came out just a couple of weeks ago about what the budgets look like around the country in public schools because the privates don't have to report. And we talked earlier this week, Wolf, I'd like to talk about those data next week. It's becoming more difficult because all that donor money is not coming into the university per se.
Right.
It's
going $2 million I'm talking about with basketball, right? Because that went to the NIL. I don't think it went to Country Roads Trust, but it definitely went into the pockets of the players. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Or it would have if they would have gone through. I don't know who's transferring. I don't know who received it yet. I'm sure they didn't give them the money and say, hey, meet these challenges. So I'm sure there's still money left over for the guys that are leaving. But that being said, did not get into the athletic department, the university did not. So Charlie, all right, now let's get back to. I really like this athletic director thing that Frankie brought up, and when you think about this, I think we have Alabama on the road, or here and then on the road. Alabama. I mean, when you set up there, so these athletic directors and the schedule they set up has a direct correlation to the wins and losses of either Neil or future coaches. Here, I mean, when you think about what Neil's gone through too, that he's got a Penn State and a Pitt, and then he had Pitt, and I'm sorry, who was the other team that we had last year? Was it the other?
We played Tech.
Oh, Tech. Tech. And before that it was Maryland and Tech. Okay, so I mean that was two Power Fives, we were going against, and I think Ren Baker's already come out and said, hey, we need to do an FCS, we need to do a G5 and a Power 5. I think that does secure it, because I know with Coach Nealon, we certainly did do that. We didn't go against FCS back then because they didn't have that 12th game. It was just 11 games. But we did have some Cal State Fullertons, some Miami, Ohio, something in the MAC. So we did open up that. Coach Nealon came or coached in the MAC at Bowling Green, so he had a affinity to the MAC schools. So I get it, but that was a chance for us to build confidence. And Maryland was always the first test of the year, the real first test of a big time, and that usually dictated how our season would go. But now I'm getting off track, so I don't want to go ahead and do that. But I want to just cap this off, Frank and Charlie. And with this all being said, let's just restate what Neil is up against here in your conclusion. I guess, would it be your hypothesis?
Yeah, well, I think it's based on the information there that he has a chance to make history.
Okay.
No one has come this far in their previous careers, and I've looked all the way back to 1920, not just 50. That's 50 to 22. That's on the chart here, but I've gone all the way back to 1920. So no coach has coached for as long as Neil Brown has, and then turned it around so that their career was longer. And two examples on that chart are Gene Corum and Frank Signetti. But Charlie, you and I were talking about the circumstances, and you brought this up, Wolfman, the circumstances. And when you think about the circumstances that were inherited by Neil Brown with COVID, say a few words about that, because I thought I really benefited from your talking about this the other day.
There were a couple things, when we were talking about Neil Brown and his amount of time and what he's had to deal with. The first thing that came to my mind was 2018, Holgorsen has a squad that he graduated 9 seniors off of that offensive squad. And Neil Brown came in to absolutely hardly any starters. So his first year, Holgorsen, what did he leave for? Did he leave for the money? Did he leave because he knew that next year, 2019, he wasn't going to have much to work with? Could it have been a little bit of both? So that's the first thing that Neil Brown was hit with, was a squad that was depleted. And then we had COVID. Now, they gave these players an extra year for COVID. Think what it was for a coach to try to recruit with COVID. Yeah, to game plan a game when you might have a guy that got COVID the night before the game, and he's out for 2 weeks. So he's been up against some things that every coach could go into. A new coach could go into a program that's depleted. But like I said, I felt bad for Brown that first year. I said, if he wins any games, I would be amazed.
Okay.
But, it's going to be a real interesting season. I said if he could go 6-6 and beat Pitt or Penn State, they should keep him for another year. But I tell you what, that's a pretty big mountain to climb when I look at our schedule.
Here's my concern, okay? And it's not Neil Brown's fault that Shane Lyons, who does not have that coaching background, does not have that experience back. Neither did Kelly Zinn. Okay, Kelly Zinn did not have that type of background. Did not have that background of saying, "Listen, we're going to go 2 Power 5s for 4 years in a row," and then added an Alabama on top of that. Okay, that to me is where you find these athletic directors failing in that kind of world, because you're setting up your coaches who's already got 9 games in the Big 12. Okay, it's like it's a full on. 2 years ago, Neil Brown had the hardest schedule in the world. He might have the hardest schedule this season. It might come out that way, and so really, is that a shot at him? Now, Charlie, I'll go back to the COVID. Everybody had to deal with COVID. That was okay. So
no, that's true.
Everybody had to deal with COVID and have that guy miss. But what was happening was these guys during that whole COVID and after that, they were out in recruiting trailers. Okay, the whole operation, besides except for Neil Brown's office, they were in recruiting trailers, and these were just trailers, and they had to do it. Now, here's the problem, Charlie, and I want to hear what you say, and Frank, I'll let you jump in on this. But here's the problem that I'm seeing: is okay, we don't have any older guys. Did you say it earlier, Frank? We don't have the seniors, we don't have the juniors. Or you say it, Charlie? Yeah, we don't have that right now. Why? Why? That's what I'm getting at is why do we not have those older guys? Because they're leaving, but even guys that we're bringing in have not been older guys. Where do you find that leadership? How do you know what your identity is? How do you know if you don't know your culture, and how do you know your identity? If you don't know your identity, how do you know what your culture is? Okay. Now, the thing is, you've been seeing these recruits that have been committing. I've been following this. I never followed recruits ever in my life, the recruiting process, because I had to do a show every year at WVU and the signing day. So I had to wait till the last 5 days beforehand and see who was going to really sign, because kids are crazy nowadays. They flip and flop and whatever. You just never know what they're going to do. So I would always wait till 5, so I would never pay attention. So now being outside of WVU, I'm paying attention. And like I just brought in with Keenan Cummings from West Virginia Rivals, bring him in, I'm finding a little more interesting. But with that being said, is why? Why do we not have those seniors? Why are we not getting those guys and developing them? That's my entire process. What do you say to that?
Well, I think you have them, but they're leaving. My
well, that's what I'm saying. Now they're recruiting, the kids love it. They say, "I'm coming for the culture." Well, what's the culture? I don't know. I'm not ripping. I'm asking, what's the culture?
Well, but see, I don't think you can. I don't think all these guys are leaving.
What was your culture, Charlie? What was your culture?
What was that?
What was your culture? What was your identity under Jim Carlin and Bobby Bowden?
What was as a team?
Yeah. I'm not asking about you. I have to ask about what's your team?
We weren't up against, Wolf, we had 22 starters. We knew out of that 22 starters, there were only 3 that were going to go and play on Sunday. So we were playing for our fans, for our brotherhood, and the university.
Okay, and I believe that. I totally believe that. I love you guys for it. I can see all you guys, how tough you were, even now in the last 15 years since I met you. But what was your identity, Charlie, as a team, the Mountaineers? That's what I'm trying to get at. What was it?
I don't know what.
Was it blue collar? Was it blue collar? Was it hard nose? Was it a brotherhood?
Our identity was that when we went on the field, people knew what they were going to see, and they were going to see a group of guys that played their hearts out. So our identity was never say die, never quit.
Would that be blue collar in a nutshell?
Come again?
Would that be blue collar in a nutshell?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Frank?
Okay, so I see where you're getting at with that. Blue collar. Yeah, most definitely.
Blue collar. Hard nose. Don't stop working. Don't ever give up. Right? Frank, was that what you saw with those teams?
Yeah, no question about it. And you know what I think, Charlie and I were talking about this the other day, is that Mark D'Antonio was at Michigan State, great success, 3 Big Ten championships, Cotton Bowl win, Rose Bowl win, went to the college playoff one year. He played under Jim Carlin at South Carolina. D'Antonio was a defensive back. And his approach was largely because of his recruiting. He was hamstrung. He couldn't go after the 4 and 5 stars. He'd come after the 3 stars, and then his staff, who included Pat Narduzzi for a number of years, coached him up. And I'm wondering, if you think about it, if is that a better approach? If you recruit the 4 or 5 star, I think you're increasing the prospect that person's going to leave. If the nil money is better at another place. But if you recruit a 3-star, for example, and coach them up, are they going to stay longer? I think what I'm saying is we're in new territory with this now, because these players, I mean, it's not said very often. I'm going to use a baseball term, started in baseball. They're free agents. And I'm not sure. I'm just going to speculate. I think culture is really important. That's not a speculation. But I'm not sure culture is that critical to players who view themselves more as free agents than I'm going to be there for 4 years, 5 years. And so, I mean, we're in territory we haven't seen before. That's no exaggeration in terms of college football. And these kids go. Look at the basketball team. There isn't one incoming high school basketball player on the Mountaineers roster for this upcoming season.
Wolf,
amazing. If you go on Rivals, there's no stars. There are no players.
Yeah.
Not high school players.
So Wolf, let me ask you, when you went out and played, your coach got you prepared. You had your game plan. But once you got on that field, there was no coach that was doing anything. It was just you playing that game. And it was you saying, okay, I'm going to get up and chase the guy. I'm going to go pancake the guy beside me after I've already, coaching gets you ready and prepared for a game, but the game's played by the players. And that's not saying that the coaches aren't important if you're not prepared for the game, but when it all comes down to the brass tacks, the game being played, it's the players on the field.
Okay. All right. Absolutely. It's about the players, because they have to take the hits, give the tackling, whatever it is, get the ball, run the ball, right? But who prepares you mentally? Who prepares you physically for that? It's the coaches, okay? They're the ones that go ahead and say, this is our identity. I have had numerous Division II and Division I coaches on the show already in the short 6 weeks that we've been on here. And I always say to them, what do you tell your team, firstly, about your identity? And the good ones, which they've all been so far, I'm not going to pick anyone out and say they've been bad. The good ones, they always say, we are going to be hard-nosed, physical, attack, 24/7, 365 working it, and we're going to come after you. Offensively, we're going to come after you. We're going to smash mouth. Defensively, we're going to attack. We're going to challenge you. We're going to play man. We're going to play zone. We're going to play smart. We're going to disguise. We're going to do all these things. But it's always about physicality. I'm going to tell you this. When Don Nalen said to us, this is who we are, that's who we were. And his coaches all said the same thing all the way down the line. And they repeated what he said. And here's the greatest thing that Don Nalen ever taught me as a head coach when I was a football coach, is that I couldn't coach all of my players, Wolf, but I could coach all my coaches. And they go out and coach the players. And I'm like, whoa. Like, that was like words from the wisdom, the mountain right there. All my coaches, I have to coach them to be me, to be able to coach to the players what I want. And there was no disconnect all the way down from his assistants to his captains to his seniors to the juniors and so on. And that's how we learned our identity, was from the people in front of me. Kevin Koken, Brian Joswiak. Well, I'm just talking about the offensive line now. I could go to Bo Orlando on the defense, Robert Walker on defense. Charlie, we could go to your era, and we could talk about the guys in front of you and back. But those are the guys you learn from. What I'm saying is, how do these guys without seniors, without leadership, how do they know their identity? How do they know? How do they know how to walk into Happy Valley like you did, Charlie? Right? Walk into Happy Valley and say, you know what? Win or lose, it don't matter, because we're going to come after you no matter what. And we're going to go to the end. To the 60 minutes, we're going to go to the end. I'm not sure these guys know.
Well, Wolf, I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong.
But how do you do it? How do you do that without senior
know,
leadership or guys that have been there? How do you do that? Because there's no, and I've said this, Frank knows this, and I'm not trying to keep you out of the conversation, Frank. I just got kind of this passion thing going on here. But, it's like, I learned it from my older brothers, Kevin Koke, right? When he told me, this is how we do this. And Mike Jacobs, our offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, saying to me, Wolf, I demand this of you. I don't accept this. I don't expect it. I demand it. Okay?
Right.
If you don't, you are not going to stay where you are. And that's what I'm saying is, I don't, and maybe you're saying, okay, well, transfer portal leave. I still believe this. I believe you can coach kids hard if they know that you have their back. I think if they know that you're going to go and you have their back and whatever you do, you can push them hard and they won't leave you because they know you care. But it's about communication. But it's about knowing who you are. It's about knowing your identity. It's about knowing your identity because you have a culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
You have a culture. Nick Saban, no matter what you say, that still is a culture. Going down there in Georgia, they have a culture, and they got a culture, a bunch of bad dudes. Ohio State, no matter what, they have a culture. Yes, they got guys coming and going and leaving, but the nucleus is still there, and they still demand that you're Ohio State. And I say it for you, Alex Martin, because I see you're Ohio State all the way there, and good words too, by the way. But what does the game mean to you? What's your identity? Well, I don't know my identity, so I don't know my culture. Well, I don't know my culture, I don't know my identity. And that is the problem, and we need to establish that. And that's what these coaches for West Virginia, I really believe, have to do. They have to do. Don Nehlen once said to me, and I'm going to let you guys talk after this. I got rolling. I'm so sorry. But Don Nehlen once told me, all right, that the first year that Oliver Luck, Darryl Talley, okay, folks, all those guys that were there, Rob Bennett, right, that he took over in 1980, he had to coach them up here for the first 6 months. Here, up. Not the body. Here, up for the brain. It's about your attitude. It's about your mentality and how you're going to approach things. And that's the blue collar, and that's how you build culture to build your identity. This is what we're going to be, boys. Go ahead, Frank. Finish it up, man.
Boy, I'll tell you, if I were an athletic director, that's the approach I would take. When you're screening candidates, what kind of team do you prefer? What's it going to be? What's your identity? Because the thing is, it becomes like a magnet. Look at Tom Izzo at Michigan State. As many of the viewers know, I was at Michigan State for 35 plus years, is that they're not going to be out-rebounded. They will not be out-rebounded, and they will not be out-hustled. That's their identity. And he's been consistent in winning over the years. And with D'Antonio, it was, I don't care. I mean, Charlie and I were talking about this yesterday. Kirk Cousins was a 3-star coming out of high school. How many years has he been a pro quarterback? Le'Veon Bell, who had a great career with the Steelers, he was a 2-star. Both of those guys were headed for the MAC. He brought him in and coached him up. And so that's what I think we're talking about is it's right here. And that's the identity, and it just continues to evolve and get deeper. And the question you're raising is, do we have that in West Virginia? Because you got to have it.
But how do you get that if they're not saying it? How do you get that? Now, here's what I'm saying. What's the good thing, right? So the good thing is I'm seeing all these commits. Charlie, and I'm going to let you finish it, Charlie. But I'll get your words out. But we got this question. I love the culture. I love the culture. Have you seen that from these young guys, okay, that are committing? And I'm saying, awesome. I don't know what the culture. I want to say, what's the culture? What is it? That's what I want to hear. That I want to hear more from Neil Brown saying, "Hey, Wolf," or not really Wolf because he won't give 2 jacks about me, but hey, Mountaineer Nation, this is our culture. Okay, I want him to say what he says to his team, say it to us, so that we all know what it is. So that we're all out running around going, "What's this? Well, is it this? Is it that?" No, man. You're the head coach, bro. You tell us what your culture is, and if it's what we think we jive with, the history of WVU. That's why I've asked all the former players that have been on here, Charlie. Are you blue? Are you blue collar? Are you a hard mentality? If you said yes, you said it a different way, but it really, to me, is the same thing. Okay,
Yeah.
because that's what you brought. You brought your lunchbox with you. Okay, because you got to go and you got to go until the job is done, one way or the other, until you give it up. So again, I want to hear, because if I'm missing the boat here, I want someone to tell me and say, Wolf, they've been saying what the culture is. Well, I haven't heard. I've heard the players say, I love the culture. Have you heard it? I don't know. So that's the thing. I think, because when you go ahead and you say, hey, Mountaineer Nation, this is who we are. This is our culture. This is our identity.
Wolf, I'm
the first one to jump on board.
When I hear what you're saying, and I think back to last year, and I don't think in all the years that I played or if I watched Mountaineer football, did I see any team ever really just kind of not play hard 60 minutes? And I saw that last year in a couple games where guys just weren't giving it their all. And that probably is exactly what you're saying. They don't have a culture. They don't have, it's individuality is what it is in today's game. It's not teamwork. They're playing for themselves, and you lose that.
Hey, Charlie, let me stop. You know what I thought when I was watching those two last games of the season? All those guys that are out there playing, to me, they were playing to go in the transfer portal. It's kind of like, here's my highlight tape.
Right.
That's what I saw, some of them. I swear to you, I was convinced that some of those guys were playing a little bit harder because they were trying to show their highlight tape.
But, I mean, there were times I saw guys weren't playing at all.
Well, I don't think those were the guys smart enough to figure out the highlight tape.
Yeah.
Honestly.
But it's there is that thing that is, and that's what I'm saying, it's missing in college football. It's probably harder for a coach right now to develop a culture because, like I said, there's too much individuality in it. It's okay, how many of these guys come in, think they're going to start, and they don't? Their second team, they put themselves in the portal. We didn't have a portal. This guy that was playing second team was kicking his butt to try to beat out the first teamer. I mean, I had to fight that, all 3 years. But they don't. They quit.
Okay. But now you're starting to see the more people leave and go in the transfer portal, they usually go down. The trend is you go down a level.
Right.
Okay? P5, G5. Okay, look at the Mountaineers. How many Mountaineers have stayed at P5? 4 or 5? 4 or 5 maybe all this time? Okay, but again, you say that you can't get this culture. Well, there's enough guys in the nucleus, in my opinion, should be, that you should not be losing your juniors and seniors. Okay, you lost Taj Alston, starter. You lost Jordan Jefferson, a starter. Those are the guys I'd be up there, rubbing their shoulders, giving them a massage.
Yeah.
I mean, those are your seniors. Jordan Jefferson to LSU is a huge, huge loss. Now we have no depth because the guy that was backing and hit him up was only doing 20 reps per snap. And he's never shown that he can actually do 60 hard reps. 60, right? And now you're seeing this is that if you don't have leaders on the team, okay, Lee Koba to me is a leader on that defense. Lee Koba, all right? He's a bad dude. He's a bad guy on the football field, meaning I got mucho respect for him, right? But he's got to control, try to do all of them. But he's coming in from somewhere different. He was in Syracuse. Then he went junior college. He is not established in the roots of West Virginia blue collar like a Kevin Coker was, like a Brian Joswiak was. Like you could go to all the guys, a Scotty Barrows, right? Or all the guys that are there. You got to have the culture. You got to understand it. You got to breathe it. You got to live it. Lee Koba hasn't lived it but 1 year. How do you know he's living the right one? Well, because again, I want to know what's our culture. Right? Does that make sense to you, or am I just crazy, just ranting?
Well, I guess we're about to find out what our culture is.
No, I want to know from them.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, I love the culture. The commits are saying, I love the culture.
But they don't know what it is.
Well, no, I'm not saying they don't know. Maybe they know and I don't.
No, I understand. I'm agreeing with you. Yeah.
So that's what I think there's a disconnect in our fan base because we don't know what to expect from them. What do they expect from the players? Maybe I'm sure they're telling them that. I know Neil Brown. I was close to the program. All right. But what is our culture? And, Zach Frazier, there's a guy you could ask, right? But again, I said, now I'm going to get off on a different tangent. I don't want to go that way. All right. But what I want to know is say, this is our culture. This is who we are. And if you're not this, you're not one of us.
Yeah, it's identity. It really is the identity. Who are
Charlie,
you?
you know who you were when you were a junior.
Yeah, we can say that about ourselves. Someone says, well, who is Charlie Fisher? What's his identity? Or Wolfman, Dale Wolfley, what's your identity? Who is this guy? Who is this team? And what you're saying, Wolf, is it's not evident. But the good news, as you said, is that these recruits are saying we have it.
Yes.
Yeah, there's only one culture at WVU. Keith is up there, blue collar. You either are or you are not an option. And I'll tell you what, West Virginia, I agree with Keith. You can't have an option. It's West Virginia.
Right there.
This isn't Stanford. It's not Stanford. It's not Stanford. It's not Duke. It's got to be blue collar, hit the field. We're going to beat these guys, right?
You know what? And it's if I got to blow snot at you to win, I'll blow snot at you to win. It doesn't matter. We'll do whatever we got to do. And Charlie, you were the same way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
your teams were the same way, right?
Right. I was a 195-pound defensive tackle, and my whole thing was I couldn't quit.
Yeah,
I couldn't quit.
Hey, you had to fight like a dog. You had to fight like a dog.
And I did. But so did my teammates. Did you ever read a book called The Boys in the Boat?
No.
Read it. Because if you read that book, you will take that book and say, this is exactly what I played with and what I had when I played football in West Virginia. And it was that I knew that the guys beside me and behind me, they had my back. If I had a bad moment, they were going to pick it up and cover for me. And I think that's lacking. I do. And you can say coaching, but that's also an inner thing. That's your own heart. It's again, it comes back down to your key word, and that's culture. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep. Well,
and I think I was going to say, Wolf and Charlie, I think Alex Martin has hit the nail on the head, and that is he reminds us, I think, that it's not just the school itself, but the surrounding areas. The school is not an island, so it's gotta fit the people of West Virginia, hard workers, hard nosed, doing what it takes to make a living, and that's what the athletic teams need to be. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Alex, if you're reading on the screen, I think he's got it nailed down. That's right. This whole notion, talking about Michigan, Bo Schembechler, Hart, you're a Michigan man. And that for decades defined the kind of player he wanted to recruit and the kind of player he wanted in the program. Now you can say that's a lot of bullshit, but the fact of the matter is it was identity in a few words. You are a Michigan man. So I think Wolf, what you're doing is you're really pushing the right button. Identity, culture, who are you? When you hit the field, what are you representing? It all fits together. And it shouldn't be a mystery.
And if you know who you are, then you're not wondering. You're not saying, what direction do I go? I know where I'm going. I know what I have. I know on 4th and 1, and if I wasn't on all fours scrambling to get lower than that defensive lineman in that day, and they got stopped because of me. That Mike Jacobs was going to call me on the phone. Now you see the quarterback always on the phone talking. Okay, offensive lineman, you never want to get on that phone. It can only mean one thing, and that is you see an offensive lineman on the phone up to the press box, is that you screwed up. Okay, and that you were getting your can incredibly chewed out by an angry man. By an angry man. And you did not want to do that. And so that's who I knew I was, because I was going to go to the extra inch, the extra length, the extra breath, whatever I had to do to try to get that job done. It's not that I always succeeded, because I didn't. But I knew who I was and where I was going. Win or loss, we gave it what we had. And so did you, Charlie. And so did all these Rich Rodriguez's teams, Bill Stewart's teams. And let's tell you this right now. Dana Holgerson went 10-2 with Skyler Howard at quarterback, because those guys understood that their culture was they turned into a running game. And Ron Crook was a real bad, tough son of a gun. And he got them into that running format and the running game. And that's where they really succeeded. Now, I'm going to just leave this. I'm going to give you guys last word. Okay? When you're up there, Charlie, and you're in Happy Valley, and go back, I know it's a lot of years ago. Go back to that year in Happy Valley, because I'm sure you still remember it pretty doggone freshly in your head. And you can't hear your quarterback or your teammates, you're on defense, sorry. You can't hear the middle linebacker call the plays. You can't hear Steve Dunlap, right? Call the plays. And you're like, what's going on? Because there's no communication. And you got a really good team. And they keep coming at you, and they keep firing at you. You got to know that you're blue collar. You got to know who you are. You got to be able to think above the exhaustion. You have to think above the noise, above the circus that's going all around you. Okay, that's what you have to, and you have to know who you are to do that. And you have to feel secure in who you are. And that's why when I say there's no senior leadership that led you down this road, and you lost that development. Okay, on defense, not on offense, because Zach Frazier's been there for a while. Okay, Doug Nestor's been there, even though he's at Tech. Okay, these guys on offense, they've been there now. Okay, but I'm going to say this defense, Lee Comas, this is his second year. And he's the leader. I think it's almost unfair to ask him that unless they're pounding the crap out of his head. Like Don Allen said, I had to coach from here up. And that's who you are. You know who you are? You almost have to brainwash him. Brainwash him that you're a bad stud. You're a bad dude. You'll do anything. Because that's what we did. That's what happened to us. They brainwashed us into thinking that we were going to give everything we had. That we were tough as nails. Because we weren't afraid of nothing.
But Wolf, you would have done it anyway.
Oh, yeah, no. Growing up, man, when you grow up, high school is one thing. I was so much better than high school players around me, it wasn't close. I didn't have to be tough. I beat them in skill. Not the same when I got to college. I had to grow up. I had to be a man. And my coaches, they taught me how to be a man on the field, in between the lines. Also taught me how to be a man outside those white lines, right outside of them. Okay,
right.
There's fewer people. So I mean, again, is that yes, I was a competitor. Yes, I was. You better recruit competitors, man. If you don't got a guy that wants to compete, then you don't got nobody. But again, is how do you know? I mean, all right. So let's just leave it at this. And I'm going to say, all right. Everybody talks about you got to run when the box is light in numbers. The field box, right there. Okay, you run when it's light, and when it's heavy, you throw the ball. There are times you got to run that ball, even though those numbers aren't in your favor. There's only one way to do that, man, and that's make a hard edge and to practice it. Steve Dunlap used to go ahead and down there and say, listen, hey, I want 12, 13 guys in this defense right here. Short yardage. By the way, we're running right over Wolf's can. All right? All you defensive guys, do you hear me? There's 13 of you, and there's only 11 of us on offense, but we're running over Wolf's can. Stop us. Okay? You had to practice that. You had to go against those odds greater than you because you had to win even if the odds weren't in your favor. And that's only one way to do it. That's learned as a team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
And that's
Absolutely.
and that's what and no one's going to tell you at 195 pounds of defensive tackle at a outstanding player that you weren't toughest son of a gun that's in there biting at ankles if you had to, right? I mean, you had to do what you had to do to get it done. So that's what I'm saying. But you also learned that because you had good leaders.
Well, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
That's all I'm saying.
I had a great position coaches. I had a different position coach every year, but the best one I had was my sophomore year. And of course that was, freshmen couldn't play back in my day. And, he was an All-American tackle from Baylor. His name was Bill Hicks. And, he taught me more in 1 year than I had learned all through high school and more than I didn't, because I didn't learn anything from the next two. But no, and he had you prepared.
Yeah. All right, Frank. Sum it up, buddy. This is the Frank for an hour and 20 minutes.
There you go. Well, I think what we just had a conversation about is really important because you can talk about a whole bunch of stuff and it's all interesting and important. But what we're talking about, I think now is the foundation. And I was thinking as you were talking, Wolf, who are you? If I got the story right, tell me if I'm wrong, that these coaches tell you who they are before you ever even sign the paper or that first down. Is it true that, like me, your father passed away when you were a young man? And is it true that Don flew to Buffalo with his coaching staff? To honor your dad?
The first day at camp, or second or third day at camp, 1982. It was when they went the first game was Oklahoma in Norman. And Don Dillon took the canceled camp, probably one of the practices of the 2 days, canceled that, flew up to Buffalo, was there for my father's funeral, flew back right away. And, that's why I didn't go to Penn State, frankly, because I was on my way to Penn State. And I was like, you know what? He came to my father's funeral and respected my father. And when a time when the whole family was struggling. So, hey, loyalty is everything, right, bros? Everything. That's what we are. Loyalty. That goes right in with being hard-nosed. I mean, it fits right in to everything there. So that's what I'm saying. But yeah, it's Don Nealon. And don't think for 1 minute, because they called him Dandy Don, right? They all called him because he was all this fancy, kind of a good-looking guy, easy on the eyes, right? But I'll tell you, he got in there, and to make a story about what my brother Ronnie told me. And I was in there, I'm pretty sure I remember this, but it was before Penn State. Billy Legg was hurt. Jack Kessler, the center, had to come in and play second team against Penn State. This is 1984. And everybody's like, oh, man, Billy Legg's hurt. What chance? It's Penn State again and this and that. And Don Nealon said, you know what? He punched the video projector. He punched it. He was bleeding. Don Nealon. He said, I don't care if Billy Legg's out. I'm telling you right now is that we're Mountaineers, man. We're Mountaineers. And they all believed him. They all knew who they were. And that's how they went out there in 1984. And then, you know what he said to close it off? He said, and I'm going to walk across and I'm going to go Joe Paul and I'm going to punch him right in the face. That's his big speech. That's what he said. And everybody burst out laughing. But they're like, heck yeah, let's go. There's nothing soft about Dandy Don. He was a hard-nosed dude that was like demanded that you are this way. And he told us, I make him tell about the Mountaineer in the Well and the Pit Panther every time. Mountaineer in the Well and the Pit Panther, knocking him down, just coming up again. Okay, it's because that's who we are. Stories like that define who you are, who you believe. Yeah. And I am that Mountaineer in the Well that will keep coming up and clawing until I finally strangle that dude. That pit dude. Coach would say that. I'm not even going to go that way. But that's what I am, because that's what he taught us to be. And I was there for a lot of years afterwards, coaching and on staff, and he said the same stories over and over. Not much ever changed, because you know why? His philosophy never changed. He didn't change who he was. He was there when they were there on number one. When my dad died, it was getting laid in the ground. He was there standing there. When we were play in the Syracuse to go to national championship. Same dude standing right over here. Same guy all the time. And through that steadiness, he developed men. And he developed tough guys on the field. And I could go down and say, that's the culture of West Virginia. And Charlie, I'm giving you more credit than you're giving yourself because you guys were tough. And you guys went and gave everything.
Oh, no. We were.
That's what I'm saying. And that's your culture. You're blue collar. You give everything you got. You brought your lunchbox to work, and you weren't coming home till the job was done. And that's what I'm saying. And take that to today's age, and you're saying we got a lot of distractions, NIL, transfer portal, all this stuff. You're right. It's not the same development. You're right. But there are teams that are still successful with culture. You got to find that. And I still believe that no matter what, if you show a young man that and he grows to trust you, you could push him to greater limits without transferring than if you had that relationship. So I think you got to really invest in the relationship side, okay, and make sure that, it's there. Because the other thing, too, is kids got to learn that they're likely going to go down. Unless you're a superstar, they're going to go down another level. So to figure that transfer portal out, I think that's going to even out eventually. But right now we're in the midst of the Wild Wild West, and anything goes. So with all that being said, I still think you got to have a culture, and I still think you got to say that culture gets us to identity, and that identity knows that we know where we are in culture.
The way I think about it, listening to you two, it's not just a place where you play the game. It's an environment in which you develop your own identity. And that's why I wanted to make sure the subtitle of the book was Then and Now. So here you are, 30 years after you played for Don, you're talking about Don, and that's who you are. And Charlie, even more years, when you think about Carlin and Bobby Bowden, it's who you are, who you became. That's what college football is all about. So when people say, yeah, I know it's a business, that doesn't get to it. It's deeper than that. Yeah, it's a business, but it is also an environment in which people develop their own identity. And if you have a culture and a team identity, does that rub off? I know both of you guys really well. It did.
Yeah, I think so. And Charlie, I know I watched you play. I watched those highlights of yours, man. I knew who came before me. I had respect for those who came before me, as every team should have that all the way up till now. And again, you see Pod saying he doesn't see the physical, hard-nosed, meanness style play. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm not going to go there. What I'm saying is I think there's been a lot of obstacles. This whole thing was about Neil Brown making history, overcoming it, and that's what we all hope. I think, Charlie, I never asked you if you hope that, so I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for you. But I'm hoping, I know Frank is, that Neil Brown turns this around, because that means we'd be winning. And that would be okay for me. But I also think he needs to change things as well to do so. And I want to see a sense of urgency. Let me tell you something. You've never seen a sense of urgency in your life, and Charlie has, when you walked into Penn State and you can't hear Jack and you're playing against a top 5 team in the country. Okay? There's a sense of urgency that's going to come out really fast. Okay? Now, is your composure going to be able to handle it? Is your willpower, your discipline, all those things together, you got to have it all. And if you haven't had the leadership to do it, I don't know how often you learn it the right way. And I'll leave it at that, friends. Okay? Are we all friends? Are we all good?
Well, without a doubt, my man. I appreciate being on your show today.
Well, listen, we'll come back and do this again. This is good stuff. I mean, this is the Frank for your hour and a half. All right? So it's good. And Alex is here saying that you've been trying to come on. Just click the link, Alex. You should be okay to come on, buddy, if you want to, because we're not here. We're not hiding from anybody. And we certainly did appreciate your thoughts and everything. I mean, this has been a great conversation. This is like the best conversation of the show. Like the 6 weeks I've started, Charlie, you're like a star right now. In my eyes. You're like a star, man.
Thank you.
Well, Frank's already solidified himself, so now you've come up there and done a good job. But that was a really good talk, and I think we handled it the right way, and I think we brought up the real issues without being biased one way or not another, and say
we need to have this conversation. We need to have this conversation about the 28th, 27th of August, about a week before that game.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean, yeah. I mean, you will have attended some practices. You will have seen some stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'm sending this out to you again, Alex. I'm resending this link out to you. There you go, buddy, if you want to get on. Hopefully that link will work for you. I don't know why you're not having a easy to talk. Hey, your crackling went away, Charlie.
What's
Your
that?
crackling kind of went away.
Yeah,
you started out a little weak, but you got stronger.
I went to another Wi-Fi site.
There you go.
And it must have been the other one. So anyway, yeah, it worked.
Well, good.
It worked.
And I'm just waiting here. So Charlie Fisher can bring it back to reality. That's Big Pod Bessick. All right. So just so you're saying. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody? Go ahead. Alex, if you can jump on, go ahead, jump on. But hey, Pod, learn how to spell reality now. You're like me. The only time they misspell stuff, I can't see half of my glasses.
For those who don't know, Pod's one of the band of brothers too.
Yeah,
so
Pod's one of the band of brothers.
He's always involved in the conversation. We really enjoy it.
Yep.
Well, you know, he was a part of that 66, 67, and he was playing on the travel squad in 68 when we went 7-3. Yeah, Pod, yeah. I paid him to put that up there.
I'm not surprised. Anyone else that we have questions? I'm going to go ahead and.
But he was cheap. He did it for a quarter.
Al, you can't get Alex on?
I don't think so.
Well, that's too bad. But what are you going to do?
He said, I don't know. Pod said he had a bonehead English class my first year. I don't know. Pod, that's a funny cat, man. I'll tell you what. You know, and here's the thing. Like, you get Dave Ben walking around with that helmet from West Virginia, that helmet with the Marshall emblem on the back. And you guys are all a bunch, when you say band of brothers, you guys are a bunch of crazy brothers, man.
That's right.
Yeah,
yeah, that's Dave Ben you're talking about.
Yeah, Dave Ben. And, of course, now this tough linebacker, now he's an artist. He always draws sketches for me. And he's like, here, Wolf, here's this bird on a mailbox. I'm like, thanks, brother. And they're really good, by the way. He's like a true artist. All right, so I'm rambling right now. We got anything? Anyone else for the cause? All right, Frank, we're good. What are we talking about next week?
Well, since it's a money game, you and I talked a couple of days ago. I'd like to, and again, not get into the weeds where we lose people, but I'd like to present some information, really data on athletics at West Virginia, the budget, and how West Virginia compares to other schools, particularly in the Big 12. And I also want to bust some myths out there that I hear all the time. The West Virginia is the poorest team in the Big 12, et cetera, et cetera. I think the way they've managed the budget is really good. And so we'll do a little bit of that next week.
Okay. Well,
thank you, Rich. Appreciate that.
Rich Finster says it was a great show, gentlemen. Obviously, he doesn't know who he's talking to, Charlie. All right. Well, listen, guys. Alex says he'll try next week. Well, we're on here Monday through Thursdays, Alex. Monday through Thursday, 4 o'clock. Sometimes we go to 5. Sometimes we'll go to, well, wherever we're going right now. But I did promise that I'll go ahead and open up the cause. Gentlemen, I'm going to let you guys go unless there's something else you have to say. But it looks like the questions are all out. I think we've really talked it out pretty good. And I really had a great conversation.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks to both of you.
Yeah. Okay, fellas.
Thank you, Wolf.
Frank, you got it. Love you guys. See ya.
Pick up that book. Boys in the Boat.
Boys in the Boat. I got it. All right. Okay. Wow. Whew, an hour and a half. Man, we're just getting it going. What else do I got here? I did promise a couple things that I wanted to show here before I leave. And let's see. I got ready for the chart. Oh, I'm not going to talk about McAFEE and HERBSTREIT yet. All right. I am. Okay, real quick. I'm going to do this real quick. Okay. This is something I want to play here.
Virginia. Can we pop up the schedule for us?
Yeah, Herbie, look at West Virginia's set to go on a national championship run.
For sure.
Win. L.
Win.
L. Wait. L.
Oh, Duquesne.
Tell him, Herbie.
Duquesne.
Tell him, Herbie.
Duquesne.
L.
Win.
L.
What?
Win.
Well, yeah.
L.
Win.
L.
Win.
Oh.
L.
Whoa! Is he on? He's on there. It's skipping. He's still on there. Are you still on there? I think we're skipping. They're skipping what you're saying. Is the audio okay?
2 and 10, Herbie.
Bro.
Two?
As much as you want to bet.
How many games are we gonna win, Herb?
If you get over 6, I'll give you anything you want. You get over 6.
All right, that house. Yeah, the house.
All right, we know we can't.
I'm not putting mine up, but
All right, go.
Duquesne. We need more Duquesne.
What is this guy's deal?
Well, why don't we look at
Okay, listen. Number one, let's get something straight. I want to make clear. I love Pat McAfee. I was there. I was on coaching staff when he was the funniest dude I've ever seen. And what we had, the banquet at the end of the year. He went down and he ripped on everybody. Love Pat McAfee. Okay, so this is not. Love Pac-Man. Pac-Man knows that I love him. Okay, but now this is what I'm saying here. I want to take this in a positive way, something that I laughed at this. If I'm like, oh, they're joking around, having a good time. And then, I started thinking, man, my hand started to itch. And when this itches, it means I'm getting irritated. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I itching a hand? It's because right there with the incredible McAfee, Pac-Man, and Kirk Herbstreit, who I respect a lot because he obviously knows a great deal about football. West Virginia football right now it's a joke. That's what they're saying. It's a joke. I mean, I didn't think that at first. And then a guy told me about it, and it was like, well, I was just growing. And they're laughing and betting houses on whether we can win 6 games. Talking about Duquesne. Well, you can say it's all in gesture. And I'm saying no one ever laughed at when we played for national championships. No one ever laughed at Rich Rod's teams when they beat the crap out of Georgia. No one laughed at Stu's teams that went 9-4. Dana Host did. I mean, you go back. No one laughed at Don Nehlen's. No one laughed at Bobby Bowden's teams that went to the Peach Bowl. It's because we're blue collar, and right now they're laughing. So, how do I make this a positive issue? And this goes back to who I'm saying about identity and what is this in sense of urgency. When I said I watched the spring game and I wanted to see more urgency from these players, knowing that the next time they're in front of a crowd, they were going to be in Happy Valley. And so, I'm not saying anything about Pat or those guys at Herb. Okay, they're having fun. They're on a show. They're creating entertainment. But at the same time, that entertainment is at the tradition of WVU. Okay, they're not wrong. Okay, what they're saying. West Virginia, they haven't had winning seasons. It's who they are. That's the reality of who they are. I'm not going on that. What I'm saying, the sad part is that that's where we are. So, chip on shoulder, right there. Maybe put one right here. Put one here. Put one here. We get some junk coming out of your neck. Get some of that meanness. Get some of that hardness. Every repetition you do in the summertime is what? Urgent. Because you got Happy Valley coming up, your first game. It's what? It's 68 days away. Happy Valley is 68 days away. Urgency is what I want to see. Urgency, because you know why? Because they're telling him that West Virginia can't win against the King. Urgency. This is what you got. Just play a game, Michigan. Okay, I know I've been there. I know what it's like to play. But you gotta have it. You gotta have more than just desire to win. You gotta have it together to win. You have to have it together to get over all that. So again, I want my young brothers, take this into the locker room. Feed on this. Feed on the fact that right now they're saying Duquesne would be a tough game for you. That's not who we are. That's not what our identity is. And that's not what our culture is. So when they say to mean, get edge, know who you are. Yes. Know your culture, because your culture builds who your identity is. I don't care if you are a guy who's going to leave in a year because you want to play good. So you better have that as well, because you want to go ahead and get your next year. I don't care. What I'm saying is take this and what 1 million people, 500,000 people saw that bet a house that West Virginia can't win more than 6 games. If you're a Mountaineer, that bugs the piss out of you. All right. That's it, fellas. Gals and gals. Sorry. I'll tell you, this is the show, man. This is the show, and I like this. I like these discussions. It went longer than normal. You know, during the football season, we're going to be going 2 hours anyways. So this is just a good lead up. I loved everybody that participated. Alex Martin, I'd say you took the day. I appreciate that, coming in there and giving your thoughts. But it bothers the piss out of me that we're laughed at. Yeah, I could think of, I don't know, some really tough mean players. Maybe I'll just go right to Daryl Talley. Maybe I'll just go to him and say, that's a mean dude that you would never want to meet in the alley. Nobody ever laughed at Daryl Talley because he was a bad dude. Nobody ever laughed. You guys have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. This is the WolfMan's Call. I appreciate it. I love what you guys do. I hope you understand. It's my passion. This is who I am. This is who I'll always be. I'll always tell the truth. I will not lie to you. I will not go ahead, and I will not attack my brothers, my young brothers. I am with you. I'm trying to teach you the way they taught me. Okay, this is how I learned. This is how they taught me to be tough. Okay, maybe not the most talented by far, but tough. Tough. Hard as can, baby. Have a great day. God bless. Here's your commercials.
Hi, I'm Traylon Davis. I'm from Jackson, Ohio, and when I'm back home, you will find me at my local Par-Mar store.
We have that gold and blue pride at your local Par-Mar store. We are coming to your neighborhood soon. West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, we have you covered. Download the Par-Mar app and sign up for the Par-Mar rewards card. Food, gas, groceries, and more, we are gold and blue proud, and we are Par-Mar stores.
If there's not a Par-Mar store near you now, there will be soon.
Stationers, #1 office supplier in West Virginia, always in stock.